All right, guys, welcome to our professional learning for today. We are a mixed department here, so we have different content areas all represented, though we are all core content areas. And today we're going to continue talking about linguistic accommodations, and we're focused on anchor charts. So we've talked about strategies previously that have supported students, such as small group. We did that 3-part series over small group, where you got to implement it in your classroom and reflect on it. And now we're going to continue that learning with one way that you could visually provide content support in your classroom through anchor charts. Our objectives today are that you will understand the research-based value of anchor charts and that you will develop a plan to co-create an anchor chart with your class for an upcoming lesson. So this is just to kind of give you the view of where we were and how we're kind of diving into one specific part. Anchor charts are not the end-all be-all for linguistic accommodations. That's not at all what we're saying here. It's just one type of linguistic accommodations that has been proven to support student learning. So we started the year by talking about all 6 of these, with each of these having different pieces. I mean, this is differentiated instruction, so you know that that's going to be bigger than just one strategy. And so we're zooming in on visual supports. And one visual support is anchor charts. We also have diagrams, images, and graphic organizers, which I know you all have used before. We're just wanting to fine-tune those practices. And then also word walls would be included under visual supports. They might include pictures, they might not, but it's kind of one of those focal points in the classroom that kids can turn their eye to and say, oh, yeah, and then continue with their learning. Can I have someone read this quote for me?
Charting promotes critical thinking by asking students to make connections, perceive patterns in relationships, understand diverse perspectives, critique the reasoning of others, supply evidence for inferences and conclusions, and generalize to the big ideas of the discipline studied.
Okay, so this is a quote that describes the why of anchor charts, but which pieces of this quote kind of stand out to you on how anchor charts could be used in your classroom really effectively?
I like it, the part that talks about perceiving patterns in relationships, that you're helping kids to think about what they've heard and kind of make meaning out of it. I think that's cool.
I like the supplying evidence, not just for inferences and conclusions, but just supplying evidence in the visual capacity.
I like the part of making connections because, for example, I'm thinking like an ED. Maybe they are able to connect it to their home language or like their culture and stuff like that, so make it more meaningful for them.
Absolutely. I think that all of those things you drew out, those are things that we as adults do naturally, like supplying evidence. I think if I asked any of you to write me a paper, you would start by kind of charting it in some way. It might be a bullet list, it might be a bubble map, but you're going to do some sort of charting to pull those evidence pieces out. Even in like your end of year reflection, you're pulling those pieces, making connections, and looking for the patterns and relationships in your learning. And so anchor charts and charting in general promotes all of those things in our students. And they tend to be more colorful and fun so that they see like, oh, this isn't, I'm just not learning, I'm having fun. I get to talk with my friends in my class and develop knowledge without sitting and only looking black and white. So these are some examples of anchor charts that we have found either online. Some of these come from our school, such as this one, the rock cycle, and this spectrum map that they did. But you can see that anchor charts can work in any content area, including language learning of a foreign language. We also have ones that could probably stay up the entire time: science, safety, 7 principles of the Constitution, depending on your class. You might just be referencing that for a time, or it might be up all of the time and you're constantly going back to where are we seeing these principles. So anchor charts can look a lot of different ways. We've got this one just on a whiteboard, but it is that color coding. Why do you think color coding is so important in all of these?
I
feel like just it sticks better. I feel like I learn better with color coding and I can kind of visualize it almost in my head and you can see that the colors are consistent and doing something specific.
I think it helps with a pattern too. If you're always doing something like in the verbs, the Spanish verbs, like you can just see that across the board.
Yeah.
And it, for kids, like when we know that color, it draws their attention versus just everything being black and white.
Okay, we're gonna work on a model. So this phrase co-create, can y'all tell me what that means to you? When you see it, is it unfamiliar? Do you have an idea?
Collaboration,
Okay, collaboration, we've got that co for collaboration,
building together,
building together.
that it's not just me making something, I'm working with somebody else.
It's not just us standing up here and drawing it out. We're engaging students in it, we're engaging our peers in it, and we're learning together. So we're going to do our co-creation over here, and we're gonna rotate out scribes. Do I have a scribe that would like to start?
I'll start.
Okay, perfect. So if you'll come over here and grab a marker.
I hope I don't have to go to the top because we might,
We can pull it down if we need to.
okay.
Very few of us are tall.
Very short
today. Okay, what is maybe the first thing that you would put on this anchor chart to teach someone about anchor charts? What might just be a starting point?
The subject of anchor chart.
Yeah, like a title.
Mm-hmm.
Alright. I had to think about it. Sorry. You're good.
It's summer. I'm surprised you even remember how to write.
I had to sign my life away for the past couple weeks.
Okay, and what are some things we know about anchor charts? Let's just talk about the creation of them first, the process of it. Or we can talk about the content. So what do you normally put on an anchor chart?
Definitions,
Okay.
examples, maybe what things are not. If we're doing like a brain dump, you just be like listing everything you know about it. For language arts, we think of thinking maps, like how do we categorize
What I was thinking.
Draw a picture.
things?
Mhm.
I'd say pictures for science.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we want to put that on here? So we had a great list. Do we want to create images for those? Do we want to just write them in a list?
Just do it like a brain dump, like as a list, like a bulleted list.
Okay, yeah.
We do that.
So we're looking at the content of what it could be. So we could have the subtitle that says content.
Okay.
And then help Cayman out. What were some of those examples again?
Vocab. Pictures.
Thinking maps.
Examples and
Examples.
non-examples. And then I would say like diagrams if needed, if that was applying to
Yeah.
the topic.
Yeah, that's the thing about, especially like the thinking maps, like you can do like a double bubble map or a brace map, or if you're trying to show relationships or patterns, I think those thinking maps, applying them to a large scale, I think can be a good way to help kids process.
All right, we're gonna trade out scribes.
I'll scribe.
Perfect.
I can't guarantee spelling. I teach math.
You got this, Jen.
Okay, how would we, and there are some other markers behind that, if you wanna change your color, you don't have to.
Good.
Okay, thinking about preparing your class to create an anchor chart, what are some things you have to do before you even put pen to paper to kind of get your students prepared to then create an anchor chart?
Should I do preparation?
Sure.
Does that?
Mhm.
Okay.
R-A-T-I-O.
Perfect.
I think you, like, you want to know as the educator, what is the outcome of your anchor chart? Like, what is the purpose of it? And what are you wanting them to get out of it? Because they could take it in a completely different direction
Yeah.
if you're not knowledgeable enough in what it is that you're trying to do.
Maybe, the steps or the
The
process.
plan, yeah.
So that kids know, like I'm thinking like roles, like what you're responsible for, so they're not all just, unless you want them to all be writing at the same time, but just some kind of plan for how you make it. Even things like expectations for like,
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Like student expectations.
Yeah. like conversation levels or handling supplies or
Are you gonna have them write something down, like,
Right.
do you need to, are they gonna have a sheet, like a note sheet with it? Like,
Right.
what is the, you know what I
The
mean?
tools,
Yeah, like what tools
materials?
are you, yeah, but what materials
Yeah.
are you gonna need? Cause there's nothing worse when you're doing it and you realize you don't have the dry erase, whatever it is.
yeah, like I find a timer to be helpful for how long I want the kids to be doing that, so that would be a material I would need to have.
and are we gonna do this as a whole class or in smaller groups, that
Yeah.
kinda goes along with the
Yeah.
expectations and the process.
Anything else you as the teacher are doing before the actual creation?
I usually make one myself, I don't know if that's,
I
like,
was like brushing up on like the
Oh,
content, like,
Yeah.
and I guess that goes with like purpose,
That's what I was
right?
thinking. Up here, came and shared,
Knowing what you want the outcome
Yeah.
to be. So
Yeah.
we could say define purpose, and then maybe next to it, like create a model for yourself.
Yeah.
Of if I were to do this on my
Right.
own, this is what I would want
You
to
don't
be
want the
there.
kids to miss any important
Right,
information.
right.
Points.
And that's what we do like in planning all the time, like we talk through lessons, like what does it look like?
What questions might they ask?
How
Where
would
might
you
they
do
get
it?
stuck?
Yeah. I think sometimes we forget that as a teacher, we just go straight into it, cause we've done it, you know, or whatever.
I like what you just said, maybe like misconceptions, like what possible misconceptions might they have? And is there a way to address that during the process so they don't make a huge, beautiful anchor chart that has incorrect?
Right. And you're like, actually,
We're not gonna put that up there.
Well, and like a place for misconceptions, right? Cause
Yeah.
that's not usually out of
Right.
left, well, some are, but like, usually, like I think Angela was doing one and some kid threw out a term.
it was that.
Right,
Yeah.
and like she's like, oh, but no, that goes here later. Like she was very good at like saying, nope, you're wrong.
But still giving them space to have their
Yeah,
thoughts
to
placed
finish on their
somewhere.
thought and yeah, absolutely.
We good on preparation? Okay, now we're thinking about during the anchor chart. We've got our content piece. I want you to think more about those guiding questions, which we've already started talking about. How do you guide the actual creation of an anchor chart well? And we're gonna trade scribes.
Well, I think it's important to talk about the different types of anchor charts, so maybe ask the group what kinds they've seen.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of talked about that earlier, all the different types, so, lists, all those things. Is that what you're asking?
Yep. What do we want this title to be? We've got preparation, content,
During,
Or during?
process or during, yeah. Is there gonna be a fourth thing?
Yeah.
Cause that's, now I'm like picturing it like a box.
there will be a fourth thing.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, what did we say? Or did we not decide that yet?
Maybe background, like a list, like trying to get background knowledge.
A discussion maybe?
You said types of
yeah, the background knowledge of the
Oh, I
types of
gotcha.
anchor charts that they already know, that they're
Mhm.
familiar with.
Yeah, so that you're accessing their prior
Yes.
knowledge and not saying like, okay, we're gonna teaching them about a bubble map when you're trying to teach the content.
Right.
Which in some situations you are teaching
Yeah.
them a bubble map, and then the content takes a backseat and you do something familiar.
I don't know if this is kind of what you're thinking about, like, I usually have like slides of directions or something like that to kind of, like, to break it down into steps.
Yeah, like the process plan rules.
Yeah.
From preparation, you have like prompts for it.
Right.
Those like
Yes.
guiding questions almost,
Yeah.
to get them thinking.
Yeah.
I think along with the guiding questions, like, I feel like you still might have some kiddos that might get stuck. You could have like an example, of like just like one word or something of like, this could be something that you could put on it. So if you need that one thing,
I like
take
that.
this.
Yeah.
They
And
don't
that's
feel like
a
they didn't.
scaffold for them.
Yeah.
So that
Get
they're
them
still
started.
engaged,
Mhm.
yes.
I know that was wordy, sorry.
I love our different handwritings on
Mm-hmm.
here.
Delaney's is so good.
All of y'all's is good.
Like, I don't know how to word this. So I'm thinking of like things that we've done in the past and like terms like vocab, just like sayings or phrases or whatever. And showing like the movement, like if you're doing like a what do we know, what are we questioning, what do we absolutely don't know, and you like show the movement, like okay, metaphors, do we absolutely know it, can you give an example, and then like erase it and move it over to I absolutely know this, but like personification, I know it, but I could not give you, and putting it like in the middle, does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
Like categories?
yeah,
or-
like
Yeah. And, like,
showing them like
moving-
real-time categorization. Yeah.
But like
I
with
have it on
physical
spell.
elements, like
Yes,
maybe like
exactly.
sticky notes.
I was just
or-
thinking like, I wonder, I was like literally just thinking like when we go through like figurative language or whatever on their desk, having note cards and having them in 3 sections, like I know it, I can give an example, I know it, but I can't give an example, and I
I
absolutely
don't,
have no
yeah.
idea, and then they can just sit there and move it.
Yeah.
Almost like
Wow.
a rough draft also.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Editable,
manipulative elements.
Yes. Cause like I feel like I do like brain dumps all the time,
Yeah.
but like a different way to do it,
That's more tangible for them.
and
too.
giving them like a format versus just saying, all right, go.
Yeah.
What all do you know?
I would, as a student, I would feel that way, of, like, if they just said, make an anchor chart about blank, I would sit there probably for 20 minutes, just like, freaking, or like, not even, like,
anything.
yeah,
I
would
wouldn't
just-
put anything because I felt like what I was putting down was stupid.
I would say like index cards or post-it notes or some temporary way.
Oh, I like that, a temporary way, like
To-
a rough draft.
manipulative,
Temporary
manipulative.
Yeah, yeah, all those words, put all the words, okay. We'll know what they mean because we created it together.
That's right.
I also think sometimes there is a really good, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Sometimes we skip over them doing the thinking first and we prompt the thinking. So maybe they use the manipulatives to prompt their own thinking. And then, yeah.
Forward thinking, yeah.
Yeah, and then the process would be us going through and having those conversations where they could have more buy-in because they're like, well, I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Well, because then they can, like, after they think about it and then you talk about it, they can then, before they even start, know.
What they wanna say.
I would like that as like a perfectionist, because I don't want to start until like I'm fully ready of like what I want
I think
to
it
do.
helps it flow better, like for them.
Oh yeah.
Well,
they
then
need to
also
say.
you could have other students answer the questions. Like, oh, I know what division is, but
Proud of you.
thank you. But like, you know, somebody over here might be able to show me an example, whereas I don't know an example of how to, I don't know. I was just gonna use figurative language terms, I was trying to like,
Well,
you
anytime
know.
they can learn from each other instead of
Yeah.
us is
so much more valuable
And I
for
think
them.
that with anchor charts, they're so teacher driven, or that's the default, is to be teacher driven, that you forget that they can learn from each other.
Well, and I was gonna say somewhere in there, maybe under process, but like flexibility, like knowing that it may, I think sometimes I am guilty of having an end in mind of what I want it to look like and what I want it to include. And that kind of takes away from their processing, and like you, when we said anchor charts, you may have had in your mind what you wanted this to look like, but you were flexible to let us organize our thinking in a way that made sense to us.
Yeah.
So I think flexibility is important somewhere.
And pointing to this as an example, like, I wanted you to struggle in this way,
Mhm.
but I could have given you time to independently do a rough draft. So that then not only are you processing the content, you're also processing how your brain would organize it. So that when we get up here and it's like, okay, how do we wanna organize it? You're like, well, I did this, and I did a four corner, and I.
Literally
remembered it."
processing the process.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any ideas on what the fourth prompt might be?
Final product.
Product.
Okay.
No, wait, hold on. Process.
Reflection or?
So process has to do with
Actual creation.
actual
This is like
creation.
in the moment
Okay,
before it's being created.
okay.
I was thinking reflection, but product could be the word we use, cause I see that we like the P's. But it's basically, how are we going to then use the product? What's the purpose of the product?
Purpose, there you go, another P.
So we're gonna trade scribes and we can come up with a title, but it's, okay, your class has worked together, they've co-created this anchor chart. Now what? Does it go in the trash? Does it get laminated? Does it, like, what happens to it? How would you use it?
So like next steps? Or,
Ooh, that's good.
Sure.
Or, yeah.
is it okay if I put it down?
Yes.
Okay.
Is everyone okay with that?
Me being lefty,
No,
sorry.
I'm
but-
not.
Yeah, it's a problem.
She's a lefty.
You'll always get left out.
Oh.
I literally just made that up and I'm pretty proud of
I was
myself.
gonna say,
You should.
Don't you wanna come down to sixth grade hallway? You wanna come hang out with us?
Absolutely not. Just kidding.
Something we've done before is have the kids take a picture of it and put it like in Notability, so that they have their own copy of it.
Okay.
I love a good gallery walk where you have to obviously teach them what that means and what they're supposed to be doing during a gallery walk, but I love their, the ability for them to go see what everybody else did and then like take away aha moments or, oh, I didn't think of that.
And sometimes at the end of the day, I will take all the different classes and kind of create one anchor chart that incorporates those ideas.
Yeah, I've done that too. I love that.
Something I thought of was maybe, cause in my classroom I can't move my tables, and although that I have a poster probably of what the concept is, not everybody can see it. And so I was thinking, if they're all making their anchor chart like on a small piece of paper or something at their table, keeping like a place for them to put them, and then whenever they come to class, they can grab it and like look at it while they're doing whatever we're doing. That way they also don't have to get up across the room to go look at the poster that I have or the anchor chart that I have. An easy reference for them, and then like, a different folder for each class period or something of that nature.
I think the biggest thing is like, not just sitting and getting, like they need to do something with it, so whether it's copying, like if they're not doing it on their own, like this, naturally what I would do is I would, like, okay, now we're gonna do some notes, because we talked about it, and we jogged your memory, we learned about it, we need to now get like the textbook definition, we provide you with some examples, and so that would usually be like my next step on like content, is something solid to put like in their binder or whatever, so that would be like,
I would do like notes, and then from there, we would apply it in some way.
Yeah.
So that's where my brain
I
goes.
like that in conjunction with Julie's, picture of it, or even them making their own, cause then they are immediately using that to
Yes.
create something.
Yes. I think that's what I've learned is if they're not taking that knowledge and applying it right away, then they're not
It's
gonna.
pointless.
It's-
Yeah.
yeah.
I love using anchor charts, and I should say, I'm going to try this, but I love the idea of using anchor charts as a unit review. I tried it one time last year, and I noticed that so many of my students actually referred to the anchor chart. And I didn't know if that was gonna happen or not, and it did, so that was exciting.
Yeah, I've noticed even like in different, like, you know, when you have to take things down for STAR, like, even when it's gone, kids will like look back or point or like where it was, you know? And so I think that's awesome. But I like too what Caitlin was saying, like if you're going to do something and then you're going to write a paragraph about it, and you can use that as your reference. Or, you're gonna do, you know, like if you're brainstorming a problem and a solution, and then they have to like make a presentation or something, like using it almost as like kind of the prior step, planning step almost, before you, but I agree with Cayman 100%. If you don't have them use it,
It's pointless.
it was a nice
Yeah.
activity, but it
Don't
doesn't.
forget it.
Yeah, I think also too, like, next step, right? Like, I'm taking like the plot diagram. Like, when we first introduced it, everybody draws a plot line with negative numbers on it. And like, what, this is not math, but whatever. And so then like, over the course of like 6 weeks, when we spend on plot, you know, we do the big anchor chart, they do it all, whatever. Well, eventually the anchor chart goes away, cause we've gotta do a quiz over it. So, what we've been, I think, do is like, we just get our notability and we just draw a line, and we just say, okay, fill it in for me. It's like if they can start like in goal, I can literally just say, okay, you're taking a test over plot. What do you see right now? And they'll tell you, I see a mountain, and then what goes there, and like they can visual, you know what I mean? Like they're seeing it over and over, and they're creating it over and over and over, and they're seeing that visual, whether it's more words or just pictures or whatever, like it's just way more powerful that way.
Especially, I mean, like the example with the rock cycle, like we do that so many times to ingrain that in their brains, and I feel like
I even understand it,
Yeah.
cause it's such a wonderful representation.
I mean, going back to what you were saying, like, I had my plot diagram in that corner on my whiteboard, and when I took it down, the kids were like, but where'd it go? But they remembered
Yeah.
parts of it. They're like, here's exposition.
So I think
here's
next step as
climax.
a teacher would be, okay, we've made this, we've given you everything for it, we're gonna scale it back, and like intentionally referencing it, but maybe challenging them more
Self-create.
to self-create it, to prepare them for that end goal or whatever it is.
I think that's huge. I know Math 8 uses a brain dump for their transformation unit, which is so many, it's just, you think math is crazy, and then you get to that unit and you're like, okay, this is a lot. And they practice the brain dump, and then they give students reminders at the beginning, you can create your brain dump. And it's that same idea of self-creating and getting it out of your brain so that you can focus on the content of the question, but you still have all of this to reference.
Yeah, I think that's huge too with the way testing is moving too.
Yep.
Like I saw a lot of that writing this year, is the kids on STAR were like literally they would brain dump a process of like how to write or a process of how to do something before they even got to the question. I think that's a really important skill for them moving forward.
Okay. I love our anchor chart. It's gonna hang out over here.
Sorry for the smears, y'all. Lefty
It gives it
problem.
character.
I'm sorry for the smears on your hands.
That's okay. And we're gonna move into, looking at anchor charts in action on our campus. So there are 4 videos here, and you have your Max books because I'm gonna share this presentation with you. You are familiar with your content area. I want to challenge you
when you receive this presentation, I want you to watch a video that's not from your content area. And if there are too many sounds around you, you are welcome to move to a corner. You're welcome to move into the science closet or go next door. But we're gonna take some time to watch the videos. While you're watching, we've got some things to look for. So you're looking for ways the teacher engages students in the creation, like we talked about. And then also any likes, notices, wonders, and implementation ideas for your room. And it is a different content area, so think maybe more about how they pose the guiding questions. Maybe they're gonna use a structure that you have not ever thought about using previously in your content area, but you wanna try it. So that's what you're looking for while you select these. We've got science, they're all labeled here, social studies, math, and E1. So give me one moment and I'll share this with you. And then you are going to share your thoughts with a partner, so just so that that's not a surprise. Okay, it should be coming to you soon. And would anyone like sticky notes to take physical notes while you watch, or are we all good with mental notes?
I'm good.
I would like to
You've got it.
I saw you still tilting your head, I was like, she's gonna want them.
Gonna want 'em. Missed it.
You're a what?
I'm a boar.
I'm a shrew.
How do I know what I am?
It just popped up.
I just clicked on that
Oh,
one. Mine
good.
says you under boar, so.
I'm a boy.
There you go.
Alright, give me a thumbs up if you have completed watching your chosen video. And give me raise your hand if you have all of your ideas fully thought through for the things you noticed. Cool. Alright, then we're gonna come back to the table if we moved away from it. And we're going to put our screens at a 45-degree one more time. If your notes are on your screen, feel free to leave your MacBook open.
Give me that one. Sorry, getting back out here.
Okay, what were some of the ways that the teacher you observed engaged students in the creation of their anchor chart?
They talked about, I actually watched Angela's, so just talking about like what the purpose of it was, and then she said, raise your hand. And then based on what, she would call on a kid based on what was, what they were gonna say.
Yeah, Angela had a lot of good questions like, or a lot of good statements like, you're going to help me. Where should I put? Let's talk about that. Am I done? She didn't say I'm finished. She just kept like, okay, well, am I done? And so that was good. I also really liked hers, having her do hers on a whiteboard, because when the kids did have misconceptions, it was so easy to correct it. Whereas when you've done it with marker on paper, sometimes it's trickier to fix that. So I really liked that idea.
I think sometimes just speaking of that, I think a misconception about anchor charts is it has to be on a piece of paper, and it literally does not. Like doing it on a blank screen under ability is an anchor chart. Like I think sometimes we overthink it and overcomplicate it, and so I do this way more than I forget that I have anchor chart paper. Like I don't ever use it. I don't laminate them because like each class period it gives them the ability to start over and to not bank off with the last class. I don't know. I just
No, but I think that's a common misconception, because I think for a lot of us in our learning experience as students in school, anchor charts occurred typically in our elementary, and when we got to middle school, when we got to high school, they happened less frequently. They may have still occurred, but it was less frequent, and so we are used to going to the floor where there's like the easel, and then it being like it's fun, but like an ordeal, where there's like an event happening, and we're making an anchor chart, which is amazing, and that's great for those students, but sometimes that's a roadblock for us at this level, because we don't have that time, we have to do it 7 times a day. And we don't want to have to use 7 pieces of paper if we don't have to.
right. I think we overcomplicate it.
I like how I watched ELA with Brooke, and she did explain the type of anchor chart that she wanted, and then kind of gave guidance of what goes in each column. I feel like that's good, especially like starting out the year. Like you definitely need to like start like, this is exactly almost what I want you to do, and then like as you do them frequently, you can give them that like creative freedom of like make an anchor chart, you know, like less or scaffold the whole thing. She also said what we are not going to do, which I liked. Just did like the citations and everything. She's like, we're not looking stuff up on your iPad. This is like what you got going on in your brain. So yeah.
Did we gain any implementation ideas? We've listed a few, but what were some specific ones we were like, yes, I'm gonna do that?
I love that Julie used Post-it notes. And sometimes giving kids whiteboard markers can be a little bit, especially if it's like a whole class, because she was doing a whole group situation, that can get a little tricky with all the markers and all that kind of stuff. And so the kids were able to use their own Post-it notes over at their own desk, write it, and then when they had something, they could go up and put it on the board. I hadn't thought of that method before.
Another thing about sticky notes is I think that's less embarrassing for kids, so they can write it down and no one else sees it. So if it was a bad thought, they can just be like, oh.
Well, and what's awesome too is Julie had to talk about how some of the causes that they thought were causes were actually effects of the situation. And so taking that sticky note and being able to move it to the other section.
It's like that
is
tangible
so
movement.
easy. Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of like erasing what the kid wrote, which totally disregards their thoughts, you have it on the sticky note and it's very transferable over to the other side.
Something that always, it's just a part of classroom management, right? It's like, you can see the kids who literally are just sitting there and there's nothing, like it's all, like they're tapping, they're trying to look at the time on their iPad. So I think it's always good to just, that's why I love the idea of them having to write, like they need to be doing something with it in order for them to fully, you know what I mean? I just think that, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and Cindy had that recommendation of giving them those kids that you know maybe would opt out, saying, I need you to share this piece, so that they have your support ahead of time. You can also do like warm calling, so maybe during the warm up you go up to them and say, hey, we're gonna do an anchor chart later, I want you to share this piece of information, so that those kids that are more hesitant are engaged.
Yeah.
And then for your kids that are just disinterested or disengaged because they want to be somewhere else, not because they don't understand the content, okay, we're gonna use this in 5 minutes, so you're gonna want to pay attention.
Yeah, I like a lot of times I'm like, okay, I'm gonna call on 7 people. You don't know who it's gonna be yet, but after we're done, I'm calling on 7 of you. So you better all do it, because you don't want to be that person who, when, you're being called on. So,
I mean, I used to do that, sorry, Julie, in
No.
elementary, cause I just had the one class, so I had popsicle sticks, so I would say
Yeah.
same thing. I'm gonna call 5 people, you don't know who, and then I would pull it out and say, okay, if you're number 5, blah, 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 like things like that, so. But also going back to Angela's real quick, she added movement because the kids had to go up there,
Mhm.
and I like that.
Yeah.
You did the same thing. I think too, something that I hadn't really thought about, but, you know, we're always talking about like pre-intervention strategies and like what we could do with kids. It might be cool to pull in some of our EDs and say, hey, in class this week, we're going to make an anchor chart and kind of go through those things so that
Like you
they,
preview the lesson with
yeah,
them.
so that they don't feel like they feel like they have a little bit of a, again, kind of a warm up, a
Right.
heads up. And then I think that makes them more excited to participate because they kind of, you know, it's like they're on the inside track, you
Yes.
know, they
That's
know
what
a
we
little
try to
bit.
do with vocabulary.
Yeah.
We let them preview all the vocabulary, take the notes first, and then that way when we're doing it,
Oh, I know
Great. Alright, for the remainder of our time, we're gonna be working through these next steps.
So you will need your math books once again, and you're gonna need to pull up an IDP of your choice. But you're gonna pick a lesson which lends itself to the creation of an anchor chart, because anchor charts aren't always the answer. That they're not lending themselves toward all lessons. So pick one where you're like, yeah, I think an anchor chart would really solidify, or this is a great time for us to structure a review. And then you're gonna prepare for the creation of that anchor chart, and you can use our anchor chart as a reference. So we listed those preparation features. You're going to kind of outline and think through those pieces. And then we have our learning partner from our last faculty meeting. You're gonna send a calendar invite to your learning partner for them then to observe you on that day that you would do that lesson. Knowing that there would need to be some flexibility, we'll work through all of those details, but we wanna go ahead and reach out to that learning partner during this time. So if y'all will go ahead and open your math books and pull up your unit plan. And Cayman and Cindy, if y'all want to work together, you can, since you're the same content area. But you all are welcome to say, this is the lesson that I'm wanting to create an anchor chart for, what would you find helpful? Cause that is always super helpful, especially if you're always in the math brain and then other people are like, what is math? They can help you come up with suggestions.
Oh my gosh. I would like our North Staff Resources folder to be
Clean.
trimmed.
It's in the process.
Love that.
I thought that it was gonna be a process that was trash, but it's back to being in process.
This is overwhelming.
Yes.
You don't like things being there from like 2016?
No.
I don't. A random schedule from,
You know, when our bell
8
schedule was
years ago.
different, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it, but that's okay. I don't have to get it, I guess.
I have one for, we do economic systems in the first unit. And I have an anchor chart, but having them create the anchor chart, I think will be better.
Yeah.
Having them have a little
I
bit
like
more
how
to
you're on
say.
unit 2.
Oh,
I went to unit 1 and I was like,
This one is
I had
slope
unit
intercept
5 also
form,
open, and I was like,
oh,
point,
that's
slope,
because I guess we
standard
didn't
form, and I think,
we have unit 1, 2,
I
and
don't
5.
know, making one or like
Yeah.
showing the difference between them
I know,
or
some,
something.
you looked at those ones.
I think
During,
that is a great
IDP.
idea,
Yeah.
because then you can also color code, so that they
That's
see
okay.
like, okay, this is the
fine.
same pieces.
Here's
and
where
then-
the slope
Yes.
is in all 3 or
Yes.
whatever, yeah. I think too, I'm gonna take down the anchor charts that I have up. They are still up from last year, but I don't want the kids to have like a preconceived idea of what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So I think I need to
Start fresh.
start fresh.
Yeah.
Even though that means I'm gonna have some on my walls.
It's okay.
But not every kid likes, like me, I hate the mess on the walls. I can't stand it. I
It's
cannot.
too much for
It's
some
way
kids,
too much.
yeah.
And they'll get to see like, you could have them take a picture of the class on the first day
Mm-hmm.
and then take a picture on
That's
the
a
last
cute
day.
idea,
Well,
yeah.
not the last day, last day before you have to clean it up for start.
Yeah.
So that they can see all the learning that occurred.
That's cool, I like that.
So we're building one right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright guys, thank you for working so hard today. You all have great plans and outlines for how you're going to, you've thought through what you would like for the anchor chart to look like. You've thought through those expectations, where you're gonna house misconceptions during that time, how you might make it more tangible for kids in the moment and going into those immediate next steps or further down the line. So we're gonna just do thumbs down through to a thumbs up review of our learning objectives. So if you feel like you understand the research-based value of anchor charts, go ahead and give me feedback on that learning objective. And then developing a plan to co-create an anchor chart with your class for an upcoming lesson. Same temperature check. Perfect. All right, that's the end of our professional development for today. So you're good to head back to your classes. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.